Hello, welcome to Born to Flow Zoom class. And my name is Taniya Hussain. I am the host of this Zoom class, and God willing, I'm planning to have this Zoom class not every Friday, the last Friday of every month at 11 a.m. and I hope you can join me then. These are free Zoom classes and they're called Born to Flow because us human beings were actually born to flow. We have just forgotten about it. Yeah, we've just forgotten about it. And that's because we went to school, our environments made us stuck. We ended up learning so much that really stopped us. When we were born, we were free and wanting to explore and wanting to learn and be curious. And majority of the time when we were babies and children, for most of us, it was free and it was flowing and we felt fulfilled. And welcome for those that are joining. Hi, Magdalena. You can turn your camera off if you want. I've got my camera off, but if you want to keep it on, that's fine as well. So these are Born to Flow classes that I am doing on a Friday, the last Friday of every month. It will be from December. So, as I was saying, we were born, all of us as human beings, we were born, and when we were born as children, as babies, most of the time we were flowing, and we just we just did what we wanted to do and how we wanted to do it. And yes, sometimes we were stopped by our parents or our carers, and most of the time in our childhoods we went with the flow, and then adolescence came, and then adulthood came. And if we think about flow, it's all about energy. And if you actually think about energy, isn't it true that everything is energy? So words have energy. When you think about how electricity is generated, there's wind power, there's water power, so air is energy, water is energy. Obviously, there's the energy of the fire, there's energy in the earth, and even earth that looks like solid and very kind of, like it's not moving. Even in the solid, there is neutrons and electrons, and there's energy and there's movement. So there's always flow. When we look at money being energy, just like love is energy, that really changes our relationship with money. So sometimes with love, energy flows, and sometimes, like with love, energy gets blocked. But then if we actually then also looked and understood that energy, all kinds of energy is connected. We as human beings are connected to each other, whether we like it or not. We are in some ways connected, like the water, air, earth, and fire is connected, like the neutrons and electrons within molecules are connected. We are all connected. The mystics have said this often, and sometimes we actually can see that. Sometimes we can actually feel that. Sometimes we actually see the connections. When we slow down and are present to those connections. Usually, when we're hurrying along, busy, we don't often see those connections because that's life. Life happens, and that's perfectly fine. But when we look closely and we see how that cat that we kind of see every day is on that path that we usually take in our morning walks. And sometimes that cat looks at us in a certain way. And sometimes we feel like stroking that cat. And sometimes we don't feel like stroking that cat. Sometimes that cat comes up to us and is purring along. That is a connection. Maybe that is the connection to the living beings around us. Sometimes there is that tree that's on our road that we are connected to. We see that tree every day. The tree, like the leaves change the seasons, and that tree is breathing the carbon dioxide that we release. And that tree is giving us the oxygen that we breathe. That's a connection. There is that connection. Whether we want to see it or don't want to see it, that connection is there. And something happened to me with a certain tree on the road where my house is. And there was this tree that was like literally just a few meters away from my house when we bought the house. It was said that this was a preserved tree and you can't chop it down. And obviously, the roots of the tree grow underneath my house. And the surveyors had a look at my house and they were like, no, it doesn't affect the structure of the house. And I remember every few years trying to kind of get that tree pruned. It was like a nightmare trying to find it because it really affected my house. It emitted all this white sticky stuff in the autumn, which was kind of really difficult to clean off and stuck everywhere in my front garden. And then I can't remember when it was this year, earlier on in, I think it was August, September, I can't remember, definitely, yeah, it was probably August. This preserved tree that nobody's allowed to like cut down, I saw that the tree surgeon came and was just like chopping all the branches. And I thought, okay, it's the routine chopping, which is really weird because I'm usually the one that orchestrates this thing after 100 emails, then it gets chopped off. And then like a couple of days later, I just saw that the whole tree, including the tree trunk, had just gone. And then somebody told me apparently the tree was diseased, had a disease. And I was like, that's really interesting. And in basically, I am not actually living in that house right now. And I kind of kept thinking, reflecting on this. Was that tree in some way connected to me? And then when I've moved house, although that is still my house, but I've moved house for various reasons, did it feel like it missed me? And it might not be true. It might be that it was already you know, like it needed to go anyway. But I kind of feel like that tree and me had a real connection. And um a couple of neighbors were like really, really like pleased, that it had gone. A few neighbors were really like missing that tree. There was an ancient tree, it'd been there for like centuries. It wasn't like one of these new trees. And I just kept thinking, was that tree and me, we have like this symbiotic bond. So then when I left, the tree missed me so much, it just died. And it could be true, might not be true, but it kind of makes me want to know a little bit more about the connections that we have with each other as human beings, and also with the living beings around us, whether they're plants or animals, with the fire and the water and the earth and the air that we breathe. I know some people feel very drawn to certain lakes or rivers. some people are drawn to the beach, and we're also like drawn to each other. And I have been a very intuitive person, that I'm very drawn to people that have also passed away, and certain people that are very famous that I don't really know that are living come into my dream. And I kind of think, why did that person come into my dream? And they, like some people come into your dreams for a various reason, to teach you, to warn you of something, to guide you in a certain way. And so sometimes that connection that we have helps us to flow. And sometimes that energy also gets blocked, because we, like, unlike when we were children, when we were a little bit curious, we kind of like went along with it. We kind of said, where does this lead? Where does that lead? But as adults, sometimes, because we have all of these limiting beliefs that no, we don't have time to kind of explore where that might lead, or we're kind of tied down to this particular routine that we've got, that we feel like we should do this. And then the energy gets stuck, it gets blocked. And as I said, we are all connected more than we can ever know. And I want to kind of bring us to today. And today is the 7th of November, 7/11, 2025. Now, even numbers have energy according to numerology. Now, as I said, today is the 7th of November. And if I have done one of these like classes where I'm just channeling what I'm channeling and my thoughts, but today I felt like I wanted this not to be an interactive class, and maybe there will be some time at the end of the, like, about in half an hour, 11:45, to have some questions about what I'm actually sharing, because I don't like to be the sage on the stage. I prefer to be the guide on the side. But I feel like today is really important for me to kind of teach something about 7/11. And for me, the number 7 has so much power. We have 7 days of the week. The seventh day, according to the Jewish tradition, is Shabbat, the day of rest, which is Saturday. In Arabic, it's Sabbat, which is also means 7, right? And there are also 7 levels of the self. And the 7th level is be the light. Light. To be light. Most of us, we want to feel lighter, be lighter. We want clarity. We want that light to lead us to find ourselves, to find God, to find love, to find others who love us, care for us, understand us, see us, hear us. And today, of November, is a powerful day. I want us all, including me, to feel that power in the air, to feel it in ourselves, to feel it with whoever we meet today, to feel it around us. And even though we might go back to being busy, let's make at least like 1 minute of today just to slow ourselves down, to just notice whether we can feel the power, the magic of today, 7th of November. They actually say the actual year doesn't begin in January. It's like the calendar that we have is kind of really not, it's not real, it's made up. They say that the month of September is actually the 7th month. October is the 8th month, and even the English sept is 7th, oct is 8. And then we have November, which is the 9th month of the year. Now for me, the nine is a really significant and powerful number. I was born in 1969 in the of March. So 6 plus 3 is 9, and then there's 69. And they say, like, if you actually think of the two numbers 6 and 9, they look like two snakes. And in one of the pagan traditions, I think it might be Roman, it even might be the traditions of like Brittany, the snake is symbolizes basically wisdom. And the snake in lots of other traditions is the snake that swallows lies, because it lights the way to truth. Because the truth always sets you free. Truth beats falsehood, beats up falsehood, destroys falsehood. Because truth is an existential truth coming from all religions and all faiths, that the truth will set you free. And for me, the 6 and the 9, I don't know whether it's a coincidence or it's truth. The fact that I was born in 1969, and then there's another 9 in 1969. I have always been a real stickler for truth and being somebody that can't stand lies, that see through lies, that can see through somebody BSing me, that advocates for the truth, even though that might be against myself and my interests, because it's really important to be in this world that we're living in truthful. And it makes me think that yes, it's 7, 11, but maybe it's also 7 and the 9th month, and we are like heading towards the end of the year, which is marked by solstice, winter solstice, heading marked by Christmas, which is signifying, the birth of Christ. We're heading towards like we're this, like it's like this, like it's becoming darker. It's going to, it's basically, this is the time of rest, regeneration, and reflection, rejuvenating, resting, slowing down. And in the old days, most people, what they used to do when the winter months and especially autumn came, before electricity, before this 24/7 kind of lifestyle that we have, before technology, in the old days, what people used to do, because they just had candles, they used to kind of go to sleep after, especially in the northern Europe, people used to kind of, go to sleep earlier, after like sunset. There might have been a bit of storytelling, but it was like the time to kind of, eat sort of very wholesome kind of foods, winter foods, sort of like heavier foods. But it was like the time, like the animals do, like badgers do and hedgehogs do, to kind of hibernate, right? To enjoy the winter, to enjoy the dark, to enjoy that rest. Because then when the spring comes, then you have that energy to go back and flow and kind of move and kind of, your, and in the 21st century, because it seems like we always have to be online, or kind of connected to our phones, having that connection, right? It then actually stops the connection that we have to each other. We have so many different ways of communicating, so many different platforms. Sometimes we're messaging, like texting, WhatsApping, Facebook messaging, I don't know, emailing, just to get somebody's attention, and we still haven't got their attention because maybe they have blocked us energetically, spiritually, right? So even with all the technology, that person doesn't, they might not have consciously blocked us, but energetically or spiritually, they have blocked us. So that connection is stuck because we're so busy trying to get attention, trying to do something that sometimes might be actually very unnatural to us. Because when we are into this having to do something, feeling like we should do something, that is when we then get stuck because we're kind of going away from like how we used to be when we were children, just going with the flow, asking questions, kind of crawling around, tasting, kind of, how like little children do. They kind of put everything in their mouths, right? Like kind of touching. We've gone away from that, like wanting to explore our surroundings, right? Because when we go to school, we're told, okay, don't do that, don't touch that. You got to sit down, you got to listen, and then it kind of just, stops us actually wanting to dance, wanting to sing, wanting to, like, run out of the room, right? And obviously, okay, it's fine. Children do need boundaries. Of course, I'm not saying they don't need boundaries, but there's also ways of doing it, which is meaning that it's not so structured, that the energy flows, the learning flows, the wisdom flows. And in the old days, in some cultures, what they used to have is, like very small classrooms. It was like, a set of 4 people learning from each other. And sometimes they were from different generations learning from each other. It wasn't the same age. So mothers used to teach their daughters, and the grandmother used to teach the granddaughter. The grandfathers and the sons used to teach each other. The was passed down, right? And it was just done in a way that wasn't this very structured classroom setting. And again, I'm not against classrooms. I've been in classrooms and I love learning. But they're saying that your mind, right? There's different ways of learning. And for me, my way of learning has always been I learn by doing. I'm a very kinesthetic learner. And I learn by doing because I need to ask those questions. I need to not think, experiment. There is a famous surgeon. His name was John Hunter. And I pass his statue every day because I work near St George's Hospital in South London, and I pass his statue, and in the statue it talks about his, like, this plaque, and it says he told his student, a very famous person called Edward Jenner, don't think, try the experiment. And as children, that's what we do. Children, babies, toddlers, all the way up to think until they go to school, probably, right? They actually don't think. They just try the experiment. I was looking at a little toddler yesterday, and this little girl, when I went to this party, she was putting everything in her mouth. And then there was this phone. Her mum didn't actually want her to have this phone. It was somebody else's phone at this party. And she was picking up the phone, trying to kind of see what this, and then she's crawling around, like looking at everybody and kind of like looking what's around her. And just was really just kind of enjoying the sensations, the people, the the plastic little cup that was in her mouth. And that's how she was learning. That's how most of us learn. Nowadays, unfortunately, a lot of children are given mobile phones, right? And their learning is from a screen, right? And child psychologists have actually said this is not helping the child to learn, because children learn by, this is from child development, when they put something in their mouth, their mouth is a real way of them learning. They need to taste things. They need to kind of, like most of them kind of put everything in the mouth. And I know as parents, I remember when my sons used to do that, I used to really hate that. I was like, God, everything goes in their mouth. But I also learned that that was one of their ways. And obviously I had to kind of make sure it was in the mouth because I didn't want my son to choke. What I'm trying to get at is that there are different ways of learning, and they are actually saying that the increase in many children having special educational needs, they're saying, is this linked? They're asking the question, is this linked to the fact that a lot of children are spending a lot of time on screens, and they're not like using toys, using other ways of learning, there isn't speaking to them, there's not the traditional like nursery rhymes. A lot of parents are like busy on their own digital devices. And then we come back to us as adults. We are also really busy, right? And the actual digital device, whether that's a smartphone or a laptop, is, we're kind of being taken to these different experiences just from a small screen, right? Or it could be a little bigger screen if it's your laptop. And then suddenly we kind of click on something, and then we are kind of watching a video, and that video has taken us to, I don't know, New Mexico, when we don't live in New Mexico, we live on the other side of the world. And then we're experiencing New Mexico, and then our mind is actually saying, oh my God, we're in New Mexico, but we're not. The reality is that we are sitting wherever we're sitting in the world, on the other side of the world. But yet our mind thinks we have actually traveled to New Mexico. So there's a trend which I see all the time. Lots of people self-diagnosing themselves with ADHD, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. And I wonder, it could be true that these people actually do have ADHD, but could it also be, this is my question, I'm not saying this, I have the answer, but I have a question. Is it that we don't actually have attention deficit hyperactivity disorder? Is it because of the fact that we are spending so much time on our phones, we have lost the ability to focus for more than a few minutes? Because, it's just the way that the smartphone can be, especially if you've got all your notifications on there, and this is how you manage, and you're kind of got all these different apps, and then you're trying to do one thing, and then like suddenly this email comes through, and it's an important email, you've got to answer it, and that one thing that you wanted to do, I don't know, maybe do your account, you can't do. And then by the end of the day you feel so stuck because you did 101 million different things, but that one thing that you wanted to do, you haven't done. And then you kind of ask yourself, why didn't they flow like I wanted it to flow? And makes me back to my point about just maybe having time in the day, and I'm not going to say which time it should be because everybody is different, but having a time in the day, whether that's morning or the afternoon or the evening or just before you go to sleep, to just connect to the energy within you, to connect with the fire and the water and the earth and the air within you. Because if you close your eyes, maybe close your eyes now, you can actually feel the fire within you. You can actually feel the air within you. you can actually feel the water within you. You can actually feel the air within you. I did some Tai Chi exercises this morning, and I just put my hand on my belly, the lower belly. I did some breathing, and I felt the air within my belly, and I felt the water gush within my belly. And I also felt really lighter. And when we actually are present to what is within us, because there is a whole universe within us, a whole universe, different worlds that we can enter. And instead of watching a YouTube video, we can actually place ourselves and travel for free and end up, let's say we end up in New Mexico and we're visiting an ancient Aztec temple. We've traveled there and are here, all the three of us, visiting this ancient Aztec temple that's been made into a museum by the modern Mexicans. And they're going through and they're telling us how the Aztecs used to worship, what they used to do, what they used to believe, and our souls, because it is our soul that has traveled there, listens, hears, feels, touches, smells, sees the beauty of the Aztec people. Now, those souls that lived when the Aztecs were a thriving civilization have all gone and passed away. Their bodies have withered and are probably obviously no longer with us. That mineral component is somewhere within the earth or the air or the water around us. But their souls are still present somewhere in another realm. And that is how we are all connected, because they actually say that water connects us more than any other element of this earth. It has this flowing energy, and when you drink it, you are actually drinking the water that was drunk by the dinosaurs. This is a scientific fact, because water is, the whole cycle of water is constant flow. And that can be, or maybe is, the connection to the souls that lived before. There is flow. There always was flow. There is going to be flow, because energy flows. It is our minds that think we are stuck. This is a scientific reality, that everything is flowing, this constant movement. The earth is spinning round the sun. The water is flowing. The air is flowing. There is the fire within us and around us. The reality is there is no stuckness. There is always flow. Let us leave this class today on that note. Today being the 7th of November, 2025. An extremely powerful day when we notice it, when we slow down and just breathe and be present to the magic of nature, to the magic of God, to the magic of ourselves. I'm now going to open it up for some questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
I was very much, I found it very pertinent what you said about spiritual energy that we sometimes block. And I'm wondering, like, what would be the way maybe to ask somebody if we kind of feel that their energy is kind of blocked to us, and this is something I want to respect, but in a way I would like to know that, because because sometimes, if I make all that effort trying to communicate and it
Sure.
doesn't come across, I just want to, I would like to know, I think that it's not because I'm not trying to communicate hard enough, but that person,
Yeah.
there is some issue on their side, which I want to respect, of course.
Yes. I feel like some of that answer, sort of your answer to the question is really about the context. I think, in some contexts you can ask, say, for instance, if it's a work situation, sometimes when I really want a colleague's or a manager's attention to something, right? What I tend to do is I email them. I put, and I don't like to use Microsoft Teams. I use Microsoft Teams and chat, and then I also phone them, right?
Yeah.
And and this is only like very rare occasions when I really want somebody's attention. And then usually, like, I don't know, within the hour, they have seen, obviously, if they're available, if they're on leave, I wouldn't do that. If they're available, they usually respond in some kind of way because they've seen that it's like Tanya wants my attention. Now, in a personal situation, it's a little bit more complex because you're wondering why that person has blocked you, although you're texting them and you're phoning them and you've used, multiple social media, whatever platforms to communicate with them, and they still blocked you. And it becomes obviously you take it a little bit more personally because this is a personal investment and a relationship. And I would say in that particular context and situation, maybe it's something that you have to look within yourself about why that person is not responding and what's happened in that personal relationship for them to block you like that. Because they've obviously maybe read the message. Is it because they are busy? Is it because they're upset with you? Is it because they just don't have the time and the space to I mean, it could be a million things. And I think for those of us that are a bit self-reflective, it's easier to handle. But for those of us that aren't self-reflected and are just, it's the other person it's their kind of issue, it's much more harder. But then sometimes I tend to give the benefit of the doubt and say they haven't responded to me for over, I don't know, a week or something. Then I would actually say, well, what is going on? Maybe it isn't about me. Maybe it is about them, and they just don't want anything to do with me. I then have to reevaluate the relationship. Is that making any sense? Is that useful?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. I think work relationships, business relationships are a little bit more easier to handle, and personal relationships are a lot more difficult. What sometimes makes it even more complicated if that personal relationship has been mixed with a professional relationship, and then it's really very tangled up. And then we can get ourselves all in a really, like tangled up and very knotted, and then all the
Yeah.
energy gets stuck. And so sometimes it means that it helps to like sound it out with a friend or somebody that doesn't know this other person, right? Get
Yeah.
some objective advice with a friend or with a family member, or I tend to kind of do this in therapy, but it doesn't have to be, it can just be somebody objective to kind of figure out what's going on. That might help.
Yes, thank you.
That's okay. I just wanted to know if there was anything else that kind of came up because that was real. I felt like this day needs to be honored, 7th of November. So it was a real channeling, and I haven't done that for a very long time.
Yes, I just had a thought. It's Angela here. I loved what you said, that there's no such thing as stuck. That no, it's liberated me in a sense, because I thought, oh well, what looks like is stuck is actually a dynamic situation that appears stuck, but actually it gives me freedom to think there are other solutions, whether
Yeah.
it's a health issue, a work issue, or something. What may feel like stuck actually may well be a situation that's dynamic, but looks like it's not moving, but lots of things are happening at the same time. So
Yeah.
it gives me freedom to look at things in a different angle. So
Yeah.
thank you for that.
Yeah. It's sometimes the blocks are there for a reason, but our minds don't want to acknowledge that. I actually think in my life, um, I don't know, give an example. Okay, I'll give a very simple example. I wanted to go to New York at the end of October. I had this like real pull to like go to New York, and then in the end, I found out I didn't really have time off from my work, enough time, and my son, who I wanted to go to, kind of got busy with something else. And then I didn't end up going to like New York. And so in it kind of got blocked for me from and the person I wanted to travel with. And also kind of was a bit of a blessing in disguise that I didn't go to New York, because I am busy with other things that need my time and energy. Um, and so that ego part of me was like, you know what, I really wanted to go to New York, and my son like kind of like, he kind of not gone to that concert, and how, he was kind of really eager about it, and how could he do this to me? And there was that ego part of me that was like just frustrated with, being in this job that I'm, been in for a long time and I've really enjoyed, but I am on my way out. I want to leave the job and been there for 28 years and move on. And but so there was that ego part of me that's really frustrated, but then there was another part of me, it was like, no, Taniya, this wasn't the right time. Your mind might have thought it's the right time, but it wasn't the right time. You weren't meant to be there. And not that I believe in fate, but I do feel like this is something I'm kind of exploring a lot more. And I feel like all of us are very intuitive, more so than we actually think that we are. And this is something that I'm I've always been really noticed. I think there are such a thing as coincidences, but I think majority of the time it isn't a coincidence. I feel like people and places and events and even animals and plants and whatever, we come across them, dreams, etc. We come across them or experience them, and because they come into what lots of people call our field, we're in people's fields, right? So there's energy and then there's fields. And if something enters your field, right, it, you is because you've attracted it, and some things that enter your field are not good for you, and some things that enter your field are good for you. And it's really important to have that discernment, right? To figure out what is good for you and what is not good for you. And sometimes the only way that you can actually know that is by actually being very present to what is in your field. And some of what you see in your field, you can see like with your physical eyes, but sometimes it actually needs your spiritual eyes to see it. And that's why I have always been a spiritual person. But it was only when I started my business that it became a lot. And again, I'm not like I'm logic. I feel like, yes, you do need your logic. But a lot of the time, it's kind of seeing something beyond the future, superficial. So sometimes there is that superficial meaning, and then there's something else that's going on, which you need that training to, right? And that means it's like, I don't know, I don't know Magdalena. Magdalena, I know Magdalena, JCM, Jewish Christian Muslim interfaith. We call it now an encounter. So I've met Magdalena in person quite a few times. I don't know, Magdalena, do you know the story of the green one, Khidr, in the Quran? Are you familiar with that story?
No, I'm not.
Angela, are you familiar with that story? Angela still there? No?
Sorry, I was muted. No, I'm not
It's
familiar
okay.
with
Are you familiar with the story of
no, not the green one, no.
no. So it's clearly a story where Moses and I talked about it indeed like in 2020, where I basically kind of Khidr, right? Like the new equivalent, the modern equivalent of a personal, right? So in the Quran it talks about how Moses was given the training by Khidr, and the best translation for Khidr in English would be the green one. So he is this figure he meets, right, when he's trying to pursue knowledge, right, trying to find the way, and then he comes across this character, this figure, who says, like, come on a journey with me, and but you don't ask me any questions. Just observe. Don't ask me any questions. And if you do, then you can't carry on the journey with me, right? And so he goes on this journey with Khidr. Moses goes on this journey, and Khidr does three things, right? And each time he does it, right, Moses asks a question, and Khidr kind of gives him one, two, yeah, two warnings. And then on the third time that Moses asks the question, Khidr says this is like parting of ways. And then he explains why he did those three things, right? And so it's basically in my spiritual training and my spiritual framework, which is the Chishti, from the Chishti Sufi tariqa, mystical Islamic tariqa that stems from India, right? Moses is on the fifth level. Moses personifies intellect, right? Logic, intellect, the mind, if you want to call it that, right? So he is very logical, like to use, looking at everything very intellectually, kind of. And what Khidr does is he says, yes, there's intelligence and logic and kind of seeing that from your mind. But what he trains him in is to how to actually use your intellect, use your mind, use your logic, right? Because some things are beyond logic. So the three incidences that happen, there is a reason why he did that, which Moses can't see. He can only see what Khidr did and the apparent, the superficial, right? What was around him, what he could sense with the physical eyes, right? He senses, five senses, whereas Khidr, the green one being the wisdom, right? Knew all the other aspects of that situation, right? And what had happened before, and right. And so basically, it's basically like personal development training for Moses, who needs that to be able to confront Pharaoh, right? And I'm sure Moses would not have been able to confront Pharaoh if he hadn't had this training from Khidr, right? And I feel like sometimes, kind of going back to like now my theme of the class, is we sometimes get stuck with what our physical senses see, right? And I think people of faith or people that are into spirituality mostly kind of see beyond the physical, don't they? Because they are inclined to spirituality or faith, right? And they tend to open up their minds and their hearts and their bodies and their soul to the unseen, right? And because they do that, they then experience what I like to call the magic, the beauty, the grace of life, of God, other human beings, and that then we kind of then we're feeding ourselves. If everything is energy, right, it then makes us feel alive. We're energized. That activation, right? Just open your, inhale, you feel activated, right? Just open your nostrils and mouth and just inhale, you feel like take that big breath, you're activated. But when we are like sitting on the screen and, digital, and that's why they say, take movement breaks and stuff like that, it's kind of like we're stuck. Like, oh my God, let's just kind of one other email I've just got to do, right? But as soon as we kind of move away from our screens and go and say make ourselves a cup of coffee, we feel activated, we feel energized. Otherwise, so many times I'm on the screen and I'm like, because I've got to finish that assessment or whatever it is, or finish that, content for my business or whatever it is, right? I'm falling asleep because, and does that, I don't know whether that kind of helps or kind of just, that's a little bit of a sum up of the Khidr story, Moses story, and maybe Zoom class at the end of the month, which will be no December, after Christmas, we could look at in more detail because it's got so many days of looking at that story, which I have actually studied with my spiritual teacher. But also, it's for me what I feel like it's this equivalent of what's called personal development training. And I think in Moses, it was pretty kind of it was kind of pretty ruthless actually, kind of what he went through. And Khidr is seen in a lot of different ways. For some in Sufi, he's like the teacher for the Sufi sheikh. But Khidr is, I feel like he's like the more wisdom, wise energy, like the Merlin energy. Yeah, he's like Merlin. He's why they say he's the green one. He's like the wise. And I think we all have the green one within ourselves. Only if we tend to like listen to him that can we kind of really connect to him.
Could you recommend a source where to read this story?
Oh yeah, it's in the Quran. And on a Friday, we are encouraged to read it. Muslims are encouraged to read this particular song in the Quran, and I'm just gonna get Quran. So
Yeah, if you could just
I can give you the. It's called.
number.
Yeah, I think it's 18.
Okay,
It's
thank you.
18. Yeah, Surah 18. It's called Al-Kahf. Alkahf, and it's kind of really interesting. It means the cave, and I was kind of talking about the cave in what we were talking about earlier is like, in the old days in Arabia, they used to go and retreat into caves. That's where the Prophet, peace be upon him, used to do that every Ramadan, which is the month of the heat. And it's like talking about badgers and hedgehogs going into hibernation, they retreat into their burrows. And as human beings we tend to want to like sometimes retreat into our like houses and kind of just in Northern Europe like sit by the fire and kind of have like nice hearty meals, like
So it's interesting that like in that part of the world where the heat is more, then that would be how people would kind of retreat to
yeah
protect themselves from the heat.
Well, they're
yeah
doing that in Southern Europe now because I have family who say that they can't go anywhere when it's 38 degrees outside or 40 degrees outside. because you die.
Yeah, so they go into like cooler places, and
Yeah,
caves
that's right.
tend to
Yeah.
be
And
cooler.
then go out at night, maybe when it's maybe 25 degrees at night or something like that, centigrade, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what they used to do in Arabia
Mm.
and the Middle East. And then, nowadays it's like, everything air conditioned. And caves can be they're the places where you tend to reflect. You kind of like got away from the hustle and the bustle. Um, in in this country, in Britain, caves also, like if you go to Wales, right, and Cornwall, and especially Wales, there are a lot of like really mystical caves. Like
Mm.
really, they're very special, very magical places. So caves have this, it's a place to retreat, it's a place to reflect, it's a place to kind of get away from the rest of the world, the hustle and the bustle. It's 12 o'clock. I'm going to honor your time, both of your time, and I will end this Zoom class. Thank you both coming. It's lovely to see you again, Magdalena, and it's lovely to see
Thank
you,
you. It was really
Angela.
nice.
Thank you very much, Tanya. Thank you,
Thank
Magdalena, for
you.
being here too.
I will be sharing this on my probably be my YouTube podcast somewhere. Um I'm glad both of you did, and thank you so much for coming. Thank you very much.